First of all, I want a leftist monarch. You're a fucking moron if you don't think that you want a leftist monarch. It is democratic. You're wrong. You're libbed up at a time when liberalism has died, okay? It's over. It's over. It's done. It's so done. It's never been more done. Give me the link for the Elon talks.
I'm like, what do you mean a mine? Like, yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down and then sometimes, and then nobody can retire. Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we can take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to, you know, boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else. And you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think, you know, that's an example. Like at a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity? Is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles, and so you increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal. Everyone's very quiet. So are people normally this quiet?
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
I have to what?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, you know, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump, won the House, won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, that, you know, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are, in effect, policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, our actions, we post our actions to the DOGE handle on X and to the DOGE website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think
totally. Virtually everything that they've tackled in terms of like combating weird spending habits or whatever are just things that the government spends money on that sounds stupid or is against like the Republican agenda, right? Or even if it's not something against the Republican agenda, the broader Republican agenda, they present it as though it is, right? They'll say like, oh, we're giving condoms to Hamas. That's like a great example of this, right? When that's not the case. Now, that is not going to be, like, you're not going to be able to put a dent in American government spending that way when you're finding like $200,000 or $46,000 that was spent on one thing or $200,000 that was spent on another thing. The American government is major. It's massive. It's incredibly costly. Okay. And doing this in the stupidest ways possible without actually hiring regulators, ironically, that understand what these programs are, like with proper audits, with proper auditors, and trying to undermine it across the board is, of course, leading to all of these issues that you have seen so far with like mass layoffs or the threat of mass layoffs that don't make any sense whatsoever. Dude got checked by the judicial branch and called it a coup. Checks and balances don't exist with the guy. That's what I mean. And the last line of defense that barely exists now is the judicial branch saying, yeah, you can't just decide to lay off the entirety of the federal government labor force. Like, you can't do that. These are tens of thousands of people that rely on a paycheck from the government. That's so stupid.
Of interest, and we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this. Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous, and we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse. I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually
No, the
use,
condom story wasn't just condoms, and it wasn't.
Abuse.
It was Mozambique.
It's abusive because
and it wasn't just condoms.
Things are
it was a broader anti-HIV. It was a broader HIV prevention initiative that exists in Africa.
But we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is
Mozambique,
corrupt.
Gaza.
And it is very corrupt.
Is it actually
It's
fraud though?
very,
No,
very,
it's not.
it's
That's the
also
problem. You can't just declare something to be a fraud because you don't personally like it. Okay? The simplest example is contraceptives. Let's say that there's enough people within the Republican government that consider contraceptives to be unchristian-like. And there are plenty of people who think contraceptives are unchristian-like. You can't just say, oh, it's fraudulent to spend these pre-allocated funds on contraceptive programs in Africa in an effort to combat sexually transmitted diseases. Just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean it's fucking fraud. It's ridiculous.
You call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be a deals made on both sides. You know, where guy gets some money, he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here. Tremendous kickback.
This whole Musk purge is built upon a rhetorical sleight of hand that everything is everything I ideologically disagree with because it's woke and gay is per se waste, abuse, and fraud. And no one in our media highlights this massive category error that is actually kind of important.
This is a big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find.
No, that part is completely ridiculous. You are not cutting $1 trillion worth of government spending, okay? I wish.
I'm not knocking anybody for that, but he has certain leanings, and he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it. We have a case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million. $59 million because it's housing migrants.
Dude, additionally funny, Trump is saying this because he did this with the Trump hotels when he was president. He literally did this. He did this exact same thing with Trump properties while he was president. He would get Secret Service to stay in his own properties to pay exorbitant fees to his own fucking properties.
Cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized.
You will see it. America overspending issue is bad. You will thank future later. Elon, not perfect, but he's smart. Dog, I am not saying that the American government is not wasteful or even engaging in fraudulent activities. I'm simply stating that these guys are not actually tackling that, okay? If they were looking at genuine fraud, they would end up harming a lot of their, important corporate benefactors. So, of course, they're not going to do that. They're not going to go after, for example, the military, okay? You want to know how I know that they're not going to go after the military and fraudulent extra spending for no reason? Because Donald Trump has already said he's signing off on additional billions of dollars in weapons contracts to the state of Israel, for example. Okay? If they wanted to stop, I like that he's picking his nose on camera. It's hilarious. Like, if they wanted to go after fraud and waste, they would not take out the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Okay? How is that taking out fraud? That is an agency tasked with helping consumers and has helped consumers. They've recovered $21 billion of fraudulent and wasteful expenses that these fucking criminal corporations have actually forced upon the American public. For the price point of $1 billion, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has actually given back to the American public $21 billion. Okay? You really think they're tackling fraud? Or do you think they're making it easier to steal from the American public, to make it easier for corporations to keep grafting you?
When you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. Here, you're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. The public gets it. You've seen the polls. The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
Yeah, Trump is moving to reverse medical debt and overdraft protections implemented by the CFPB. Wow, how wonderful for the American public.
Do you agree with that? Is that the plan?
I really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse.
If only there were people that wasn't, if only there were more people and not just like random dumbass Twitch streamers like myself actively talking about this every time they had an opportunity to talk about this, instead of talking about USAID and how we must defend USAID. And if we don't defend USAID, then China is going to take over. Like, instead of saying shit like that, maybe they should talk about this. I don't know. The only other media outlets that I've ever heard this kind of commentary from is myself, Michael from Pennsylvania, Chapo Trap House, TrueAnon, and fucking Majority Report. What is going on? Where is the Democratic Party? This is 100% an abdication of duty, okay? It shouldn't be up to Dropsite News, Majority Report, myself, and some others that are actively saying this is a ridiculous thing that they're doing. It is actually not beneficial for the American public. This is a horrible thing to do, especially when you have someone that is responsive to populist sentiment, okay? It's crazy. It's crazy to me that Hakeem Jeffries is not talking about this every goddamn day, okay? It's crazy to me that the Democratic Party is not going on every news outlet and saying, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. They claim to be on the side of the American public. Instead, they're just showing their bellies, dude.
Spending bill, the March 14th deadline to try to rein him in.
Chuck Schumer also said they're not going to put up a government spending fight as well, which I think is ridiculous. I think they are going to do that, I suspect. That would be insane.
Look, here's the bottom line. The Republicans are already shutting down good chunks of the government.
And no, this isn't hypocrisy baiting, chatter. What are you talking about? This is directly saying that the Republicans are currently actively doing harm to the American public. Okay? Do you understand? It's not about like, oh, look at the hypocrites. They said they care about the workers, but here's what they're doing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying communicate that they're harming the workers. This is more than hypocrisy baiting. Hypocrisy baiting is when you say that Trump's border wall is stupid and you're racist for defending it, and then turning around and being like, we are the ones who actually want to build the border wall. Trump doesn't want to build the border wall any longer. That's dumbass hypocrisy baiting. That makes you look like an idiot. Okay? That makes you look like you got caught, that Trump was right all along, that immigrants do constitute a national security threat, and that you got caught, and now you're going, oopsie, I guess we want to build the border wall now. Everyone can see that you're the hypocrite in that situation. You're the dumbass in that situation. Saying that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is actually responsible for $21 billion of fraudulent and wasteful and criminal expenditures that the American public had to pay for, the American consumers had to pay for, okay? And then turning around and abolishing that agency being an overall burden, directly talking about medical debt on your credit card, directly talking about overdraft fees, things that every single American can understand, because at a certain point, they have experienced this, okay? They've experienced these problems. They should remind people why they no longer experience some of these problems. It is because of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Same with Lena Khan and all of the initiatives from Lena Khan. Taking out Lena Khan is a massively consequential move. Anyway, let's continue listening to this dumbass now.
And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. So,
do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there are some worthy things, but overall, if you say what was the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
I can just ask a follow-up to the Pentagon contracts. If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is that a conflict of interest?
And are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills, or.
You also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really, the first order of business is to make sure we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. I thought my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff. So it's a bit hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that. No, the stuff we're doing with the Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So for example, it's like, what type of payment is this? You can't just leave the field blank. Currently, many payments, the field is left blank. And you have to describe what's the payment for, some basic rationalization. That also is left blank. So this is why, the Pentagon, when's the last time the Pentagon passed an audit? I mean, a decade ago, maybe? Ever? Really? And we want to just, in order to actually pass audits, you have to have financial information that allows you to trace the payments. And once in a while, the Treasury has to pause payments if it thinks the payment is going to a fraudulent organization. Like, if
What?
to get on that payment, the do not pay list, it means that this is someone no pay list. It means that this is someone that is like dead people, terrorists, known fraudsters, that kind of thing. We should not pay them. But currently we do, which is crazy. We should stop that.
Many transactions. And by the way, 100 team. And for the sake of the country, I hope that the person that's in charge and the other people that report to me that are in charge are allowed to do the right thing, namely make sure everything's honest, legitimate, and competent. But we're looking at just, when you look at USAID, that's one. We're going to look at the military. We're going to look at education. They're much bigger areas. But the USAID is really corrupt. I'll tell you, it's corrupt.
They cooked the stream. It's desync now.
And I can't imagine a judge saying, well, it may be corrupt, but you don't have the right. You got elected to look over the country and to, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and look and see whether or not things are right that they're paying or that things are honest that they're paying. And nobody can even believe this. Other people, law professors, right away. You're supposed to be running the country, but we're not allowed to look at who they're paying it to and what they're paying. We have massive amounts of fraud that we caught. I think we probably caught way over a lot of billions of dollars already in, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And it's going to go to numbers that you're not going to believe. And much, as I said, much is incompetence and much is dishonesty. We have to catch it. And the only way we're going to catch it is to look for it. And if a judge is going to say you're not allowed to look for it, that's pretty sad for our country. I don't understand how it could even work.
On the buyout program, can you personally guarantee that?
Which one?
The buyout program, the operative federal workers. Can you personally guarantee that the workers who opt in to resign now will be paid through September?
They'll get their money, but they're getting a good deal. They're getting a big buyout. And what we're trying to do is reduce government. We have too many people. We have office space. It's occupied by 4%. Nobody's showing up to work because they were told not to. And then Biden gave them a 5-year pass, some of them, 48,000 of them, gave them a 5-year pass, that for 5 years you don't have to.
I'm more conservative. Serious question, because I honestly don't know. Are liberals thinking what they are claiming to find in USAID is lies? No. Liberals are saying that USAID is a profoundly important aspect of American foreign policy that works to continue American dominance by doing soft power initiatives around the globe. Some of those initiatives are actually good for the overall for the overall public that receives these initiatives, like, reproductive health care in Africa is good. It's not a bad thing. Okay, even though it is done at the behest of the United States of America doing soft power in these countries, making these countries reliant on the U.S. and making those security cooperation agreements that come later down the line an overall easier one to sell to the broader public. Okay. Having said that, however, there is a lot of just insanity in the way that they're targeting things. Like they'll just be like, oh, well, they're giving $40,000 to a Guatemalan transplant. And then you look it up and it's actually like a joint partnership agreement to fund the arts. Okay. Between a Guatemalan university and an American university. It's like, yeah, that's not fraudulent expenditure. I think a lot of these dummies also personally think that like anything that they're doing in terms of pro-LGBTQ or whatever is not done at the behest of like later utilizing these existing relationships as a way to destabilize countries, or at least like to have some kind of civil society organization on the ground to develop a better understanding, to do espionage if necessary. But instead, it's just because we're woke, and we're doing this because we're truly woke. It's a way to believe the propaganda that liberals have put forth. Okay? It's ironic because that means you genuinely believe that the American government is doing things because they're kind. You have to be a real dumbass to think that the American government is doing things because they're kind. Okay? Yeah, the American government is woke and gay. That's why they were doing aid. Ridiculous. They're doing aid so they can eventually utilize the existing relationships that they've developed on the ground for whatever suits their purpose. Also, none of it is fraudulent, okay? As Adam Johnson mentions here, everything I ideologically disagree with because it's woke and gay does not mean it's waste, abuse, and fraud. Do you understand? Like, oh, well, I don't like this personally, so I think it's stupid and bad and abuse and fraud is a ridiculous way to do this, okay? Unintelligent person alive. 3, if you're really implying that U.S. aid is not done out of pure goodness of the American heart, then name one thing U.S. did wrong in the last 50 years. I can't name one. It would be easier for me to name one thing that America has done that is there's nothing I can name in general that America has done in the name of good, okay? Even Ukraine is a great example of what I'm talking about. Ukraine is on the right side in terms of morality, okay? Ukraine has an understandable moral position to rid its national borders of a military invasion. America's interest in Ukraine, however, which Trump basically revealed openly, is not so good, okay? You can't go wrong back in Ukraine. That's it. You have to look at the situation and truly believe that America is always doing good things around the world for you to assume that their intentions with Ukraine is good, even if they openly state that their intentions are not pure. Their intentions are impure. It's also a short-sighted policy because there's a funding after-school programs for undeserved communities, DEI, and fraud, but the role of that program is to decrease incarceration, saving the state money. For example, it can also be self-serving. Yes, a lot of those things, a lot of the initiatives like that, after-school programs and whatnot, seem costly, wasteful, and stupid. Like they'll be like, oh, dude, they're doing violin, they're doing like musical education lessons in the south side of Chicago or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that is an incredibly important initiative because as studies have shown time and time again, after school programs actually significantly lower at-risk youth's likelihood to go and do crimes, okay? They're not doing it because they're woke and gay. They're doing it because it's obviously beneficial. It saves the government more money down the line as well if these kids are not doing crime and then doing crime obviously is chaotic. They're stealing cars and whatever. Or obviously you don't want like property loss in general for the broader public, but it's also better overall for the government now that you don't have to like put a bunch of children in the system at an early age. But that requires you to, one, do a little bit of reading. In order to understand these initiatives and the long-term impact of said initiatives, that requires you to imagine an alternative instead of simply closing your eyes and going, nah, dude, I have these racist beliefs that these guys are intrinsically evil and inferior. I won't say that they're inferior because of their race. I'll say they're inferior because of their culture as a substitute for race, and that no amount of violent lessons is going to stop these kids from stealing Kias or whatever. When all evidence points to the exact opposite, that these initiatives are very helpful. Anyway, if only we could get Republicans to think that, like, the carceral state is woke and gay and incredibly costly. The AP says it was barred from covering a White House event because of its editorial policy regarding the Gulf of Mexico. Today, we were informed by the White House that if AP did not align its editorial standards with President Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, AP would be barred from accessing an event in the Oval Office. This afternoon, AP's reporter was blocked from attending an executive order signing. Ugh, so fucking petty. It's so unimaginably stupid. Anyway, here, there was a decent question here in terms of conflict of interest. But if there's a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts, is there any sort of accountability, check and balance in place that would provide any transparency to the American people?
There's a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself. For instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts. When it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president I know has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability, check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say like, wait a second, hey, that seems like maybe that's, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately,
Including you yourself.
Yes, but transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And then you can see, am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that.
No, you wouldn't. No, you are doing that. You literally brought up fraudulent and wasteful spending, talking about how the federal government offered millions of dollars to New York hotels in order to house migrants. That's not wasteful spending. That's the federal government actually trying to fix the crisis caused by Governor Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis by, without informing the local authorities, shipping, kidnapping, and trafficking tens of thousands of migrants from the state of Texas into the state of New York to play political football with people's lives. In that process, the federal government has to step in and say, okay, for the overflow, we have to, in the interim period, we have to make sure that these people are housed. Okay. So what do? They pay hotels to house the migrants. Okay. That is not wasteful spending or fraudulent spending. That's just an understandable thing that the federal government did. You know what is actually fraud? A conflict of interest? When you are the president and you own a bunch of hotels and you actually overcharge the federal government to stay in those hotels during the duration of your presidency, and you make money that way with federal funds. That's actually a conflict of interest. That's actually wasteful spending directly. That is a direct instance of fraud. That's what Donald Trump did. But of course, no one will look at that and go, what the fuck are we talking about?
Segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this.
Yeah. Also, you got this. Elon Musk's pushing into the financial services with a Visa deal immediately after taking out the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's crazy. Source, not doubting you, have just never heard of this till today. Which one do you want to source for? Donald Trump charging the federal government or the thing that he just brought forward? Here, Trump overcharged Secret Service by 300% for accommodations at his hotels. House Oversight Committee's report further called the ex-president's term the world's greatest get-rich-quick scheme. It is such a transparent instance of corruption, too. It's crazy. Also, Donald Trump did a cryptocurrency rug pull, dude. What are we talking about? Here's Ryan Grimm talking about the CFPB getting taken out and how devastating that is.
One of the coolest things that the CFPB, that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, did that you may not have heard of. One, they said that if you have medical debt, that cannot be included on your credit score. And two, they stopped a practice of banks rigging your overdraft protection. The way it used to work is that, let's say you have $12 left in your checking account and you go to the coffee shop, you get a $4 coffee, now you're down to $8, then you pay for your parking and that's $15, and now boom, you're under zero, so you get an overdraft hit right there. What the banks figured out is that they could move the transactions around. So if you spent $15 and had 12 left, they would make that the first transaction that they hit. So boom, now you're $3 under. Then they hit the coffee. So you get 2 overdraft fees. And what they also figured out is that they could do that over a span of days. And so whenever your balance would get close to 0, they would find one of your transactions that was higher than that balance, even if you had other transactions ahead of it. And so the CFPB said, you can't do this anymore. So that rule and the medical debt rule were put forward by Rohit Chopra, the CFPB director, under Biden. And if you look at this statement here, this is from the White House announcing that among the reasons that it is shutting down or trying to shut down the CFPB, because it's completely illegal to shut it down.
Yeah, have fun with those overdraft hits again. You know what I mean? This is some shit that actually destroyed me as well in the past, back when it used to exist, back when I was a broke boy.
Are these two things. They reference, quote, they buried $50 billion in medical debt. That's a reference to that rule. And this thing where it says itself the authority to regulate Americans' checking accounts.
What's really frustrating about all of this, number one, this is the same party that forced the Biden administration's hand in claiming that the executive authority could not abolish student loan debt. Okay. Now they're saying the executive authority could abolish the Department of Education in its entirety. Think about that. Because when there's a will, there's a way. Nobody cares. Okay. Nobody actually cares. It was just that the Biden administration had to play ball. They had to play by the rules, okay? That kind of attitude, that kind of opinion, that kind of subservience to institutional norms will always cause you to lose. And that is very frustrating for the American public. They just go, oh, ineptitude every step of the way. Once again, over and over again, these Democrats cannot actually push for their agenda. The average American does not look at that and go, oh, well, their hands are tied. Okay, well, the Republican hands are tied too, but you see them bouldering through those binds every single day. Think about that. And this leads me to my second point, because a lot of people are like, why is Trump so popular right now? It's because a lot of Americans have grown frustrated with the way things are. And a lot of Americans hate the massive hurdles that are always happening, the gridlock that's always happening in Congress, the gridlock that's always happening in terms of like not following through on your agenda. Okay, so when Donald Trump actually boulders through this stuff, people look at him and go, well, at least he's doing something, without realizing that the things that he's doing are actually inherently harmful to the broader public and their interests. But it does not matter, because most Americans just look at that and go, well, at least he's doing shit. That's it. This is why I always try to tell all of you and all who will listen that the Democrats should behave like Republicans, not in terms of policy, but in terms of politics. That's it. That's it. Democrats should be playing politics in the same way that the Republicans do. Obstruct when you're not in power, and when you're actually in power, do everything you can to overcome whatever kind of legal or congressional hurdle is placed in front of you. That's it. That's it. But they don't do that. That's why it's laughable when you think about the Biden administration, which had every right to actually abolish student loan debt. They had all of the power, and the Supreme Court decided it was unconstitutional. Fuck the Supreme Court. What are you going to do about it? But Biden was, of course, the wrong guy for that, because he can't go on television and do what Trump does all the time, which is to say the Supreme Court is an enemy of the American people. They want people to be saddled with unlimited debt for the rest of your lives. They want you to be saddled with unlimited debt. They pulled a bullshit case out of nowhere to claim that there was a financial institution being harmed. The financial institution itself said that there is no legal standing for this court case. Are you joking? Fuck the Supreme Court. Fuck that. What are you doing? The Supreme Court shut Biden down. They did pass it. Are you so sure that if the Supreme Court said no to Trump would ignore that? Should Biden? This take is a miss. Biden did attempt to forgive student loan debt. Brother, what are you saying? Do you hear yourself? The Supreme Court, especially under the Biden administration, was supremely unpopular. Okay? You have to play hardball. You can't just say, all right, well, they have awesome power at the end of the day. They should have changed the Supreme. They should have changed the Supreme, but just not listening to the Supreme Court is insanity. Yeah, well, when Donald Trump does that, you'll see. If it ever happens, he already has a completely captive supermajority Supreme Court, but if that were to ever happen, you'll see how this works, okay? It's insane for him too. Yeah, except he does insane shit that is not overall beneficial for the American public every goddamn day. And we just go, oh, what can we do about it? But in the eyes of the broader public, they look at that and go, well, that's my president right there. He's actually doing something. You're demonstrating the same exact attitude that is fundamentally leading Democrats to lose every step of the way. If you are, ironically enough, even if you are an institution defender, if you have one party that opposes institutions every step of the way, that will look to find any kind of legal jargon to justify their actions that continue with their agenda of deregulation, destroying the federal government, destroying the regulatory agencies, offering tax cuts for the wealthy. If you have a party that does not care about the rules or will find like some antiquated legal standard to claim that they have the righteous, like enough of a legal power to behave in this way, then you're always going to sit aside as the institutions are destroyed. Okay, we can do things, but saying Biden should just say fuck the Supreme Court, let them enforce it. Then we have a king, and I don't want a king anything. Dog, we already have a king, and that is because Biden was not aggressive enough. That is my point. And your attitude is the reason why Democrats fucking lose every step of the way. You're still saying, think of the norms as the current White House has taken taken lighter fluid and a match to the entire institution. And as the entire institution is falling apart, as everything is on fire, you just go, well, at least the structure still stands. We must protect what remains. You're basically hallucinating an alternative reality, okay? You're hallucinating a reality where anybody actually cares about institutions and their infallibility. Aggressive, if you're saying we should do away with democracy, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't want a leftist monarch. First of all, I want a leftist monarch. You're a fucking moron if you don't think that you want a leftist monarch. It is democratic. Do you think that when the overwhelming majority of the public does not want abortion to go away, and then the Supreme Court decides, nah, it's going away, protecting that standard is democratic? No, it's not. It's inherently undemocratic. What the fuck are you talking about? You don't even need to be a left-wing monarch in that regard. You're wrong. If you think the Supreme Court of 9 unelected lifetime appointment justices making up fake nonsense to decide and lying to the public, by the way, every step of the way, because all of the Trump appointees lied to the American public when they said they would not overturn Roe v. Wade. And then they ended up doing that. That was inherently undemocratic. And instead of addressing that and saying this decision is completely unacceptable, okay, the Democrats just basically said, oh, this is a great opportunity to fundraise. And people like yourself that are at the heart of the Democratic Party still maintain the position that, oh, they're trying their very best. You're libbed up at a time when liberalism has died, okay? It's over. It's over. It's done. It's so done. It's never been more done. And you're still trying to maintain this like aesthetic defense of liberalism and these institutions, and also simultaneously defend the Democratic Party. This is the reason why the Democratic Party's approval rating is lower than Donald Trump right now. Okay? Who is this for? Who is this argument for? It's for nobody. This clip will not age well. What do you mean? You cannot try to fight fair with people who are not fighting fair at all. This clip will not age well is so stupid because guess what? It's already aging. It's crazy. It means you saying left-wing monarchy is democratic. Oh, whatever. I don't give a shit about whether it's a monarchy or a theoretical democracy or whatever the fuck, okay? Those are different and virtually all invalid forms of government. You're hyper-focusing on the aesthetics while claiming that it's actually a left-wing monarch that is doing this when they're abiding by the democratic standards. What are you talking about? Making sure that 9 unelected Supreme Court justices abide by what they have told the American public in front of Senate judicial hearings is actually maintaining the democratic principles, not the opposite, okay? Do you understand? You can call that, oh, a left-wing monarch all day, every day. I don't give a shit what you call it. That is actually maintaining the democratic wishes. Drew Cook, can't wait for that part of the explanation to not make it to the clip chimp. I know. It doesn't matter, okay? It does not matter. Oh my God, people are gonna clip me out of context again. I speak for 8 hours a day, okay? If you want to truly address or truly understand what my perspective is, you can come in and actually fucking hear what I have to say. It doesn't matter. People have been doing this for the past 6 years, okay? Look at what is happening. Look at what is happening to America. Look at what is happening to the so-called liberal institution defenders. If your goal as Donald Trump and Elon Musk are simultaneously lighting the federal government and all regulatory agencies on fire, if your job is to turn around and say, how can I make this about my least favorite Twitch streamer because my favorite content creator fucking hates him and I'm a loyal servant of him, then you're a pathetically unserious person. Stop. Nobody cares. Okay? Please. How is a leftist monarch good and what the point of saying it? That is what I missed. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care about a leftist monarch or a democratic organization. My point is not that. My point is currently we don't have a real democratic process. And if you're defending the fucking Supreme Court, you're not defending democracy. That's my point. Stop maintaining like aesthetic sentiments about liberalism and institutions. You're not living in the real world. Look around. It's so funny to be like, oh, leftist monarchs, I'm terrified. What are you talking about? We literally have direct fascist control over the fucking government, and you guys are worried about a Stalin? What are you talking about? What the fuck? There is no leftism in this country, okay? The average American is not even class conscious a little bit, okay? Shut the fuck up. Stop looking to the most leftist person that you can point to say, I'm not like that. I'm so scared of that. See, I'm one of the good ones. Who is this for? There's dudes named Big Balls and Booger Eater ripping through the federal regulatory agencies and engaging in mass layoffs, and you're over here being like, well, the institutions. I'm scared. I'm scared of communism. The fuck? Be serious, dude. You know who was a left-wing monarch? FDR. Dumbasses. You know who's also doing FDR shit, but in the opposing direction, in the fascist direction? Donald Trump. Okay, that's it. If you want to understand why people think he's killing it right now, well, because Donald Trump is doing FDR shit, but in the opposite direction.
By dictating government price controls. That's how the banks say that the CFPB stopped them from moving transactions around to hit you with extra overdraft fees. Now, if you click on those links, they would actually take you to statements.
He was not. He threatened the Supreme Court. He threatened to stack the court, saying you ignore the Supreme Court. That is not FDR. You're wrong. I agree with you most of the time. I just don't agree with the idea that the solution is to do it Trump style. The only solution is to actually fight back, okay?
By banks. So this is the Trump administration coming in, saying it's here for working Americans and going and doing bankers' bidding so that they can keep ripping you off.
Oh, Big Balls heard you. And hacked you? Yeah. Elon admits he will tell some lies. Yeah, I mean, he's like, oh, my bad. Yeah, we dominated the media cycle for like 48 hours nonstop. But here's where we're at.
Was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact-check this, it apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be really excited about.
Mr. Musk, you said on X